Hello, investors. Welcome to another edition of 18 Minutes with 180 Markets. Friends, sadly, we are still in COVID lockdown down here in Melbourne and in Sydney as well. But one thing COVID has really done is it's poured kerosene onto existing trends already in place. And two of the biggest trends out there are certainly the shift to online and also data science. And we have with us today a company, Bet Odyssey, and its managing director, George Parthimos. And Bet Odyssey is taking advantage of both of those trends that are already in place and only accelerating. And with us here today to talk all about it is George himself. George, with that introduction, welcome to 18 Minutes with 180 Markets.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Hey, George, everybody's got a story. In a couple of minutes, can you just tell us how did you get to where you are today?
Look, I've been in the ICT game for the last 30 odd years. I started my first job was actually with Telstra, and I was there for 10 years. And while I was at Telstra, I was the program manager for the division of the business that actually rolled out Telstra's Big Pond cable network back in the early 2000s. So I kind of oversaw the rollout and the shift from dial-up modems into the broadband infrastructure that we have today. So got a really good, solid understanding about how the internet actually works and the infrastructure and what requirements we needed during that time, and also the growth rates we were seeing back in the day. So I remember walking into an exchange building, and there was a whole floor, and there were two little machines in there, and then went back 6 months later and 3 floors were full with all this internet equipment. So that's how fast the internet was growing at the time. So spent a lot of time in the early days looking at internet growth. And then from there, I started developing my first startup, which was an internet car radio play that morphed into a telematics business that I actually took public in 2014. Exited that business in 2017. And then saw a need, only because it was Melbourne Cup time, and friends were always asking for tips, and that's kind of the typical thing we do in Melbourne. Obviously, you get close to Melbourne Cup, everyone wants to get involved, and people ask each other for tips. But the way that people were providing tips were either a recommendation from a friend, or you'd get a phone call from someone from the track, who'd spoken to the jockey or spoken to one of the horses. I mean, who knows where they get the tips from? And I kind of thought, okay, well, that's it's good, it's exciting, but how do I apply my learnings in technology to try and make it easier and to bring it into the 21st century? So I kind of looked at the problem, realised the market opportunity. There were 1.3 million Australians that have a punt every month. So I thought, okay, well, that's a decent market size. Obviously, Spring Carnival in Melbourne and Autumn Carnival in Sydney are obviously big times for racing. Looked at the problem, thought, okay, we can apply technology, because I've got a strong background in technology. And then I realised that it wasn't just a thoroughbred racing problem; it was actually a racing and sports tipping problem. So started building in 2018 a platform that would allow for users to be able to save time and improve their winning strike rate. And that's kind of where it all started. So 3 years worth of R&D and development, and we come to today where we have a product in the market, we have daily active users, and things are going really well.
Excellent. So to be clear, Bet Odyssey, it's a companion service. Is that right? It is, to be very clear, it is not a booking system per se.
Yes, no, we're definitely not a bookmaker. What we do is we effectively try to automate something that people do manually, and that is they go through a form guide, they use a process of elimination to try and identify potential tipping opportunities. And so we automate that process, and we use technology to just make it smarter. So tips have been floating around for over 100 years. Racing in Australia, obviously, it's in our DNA. We love racing, we love sports, and Australians do love to have a punt. And so all we're doing is we're taking it into the 21st century, and we're allowing for people to automate that whole process, so they don't have to think, and they don't have to waste any time, and they don't have to miss any opportunities.
Right. And as an example, like we all, not all of us, but most of us know that there's certain factors that would take place. For an example, what kind of track is it? Is it what is the weather conditions, the length, and all those other factors? Does Bet Odyssey effectively pull all that information in to spit out some type of analysis on it?
Yeah, so I mean, that's a really great question. So if you actually think about what's important to me as a potential punter is very different to what might be important to you. So what's important to me might be track conditions, it might be distance, whereas to you it might be the barrier, it might be the past results, and so everybody applies their own very unique process of elimination when they go through a form guide. And so what Bet Odyssey does is it basically allows for a user to enter in all of the parameters they're looking to actually filter to say, okay, well, I want horses that only have run this distance or come from these barriers or have this type of a background in terms of performance. And then it automates that process where it saves those profiles onto our platform, and it will individually go through every single race, every single track, every single horse, and it will tell you when there is an exact match of what you want. And then what we then do, which we think is really, really smart, is we apply almost like what Google do with search, where we go across our entire platform and we identify the most popular recommendations that our users have actually identified as the tips of the day. And then we produce very specialized recommendations based on that popularity. So if you think about it, we cater for the really sort of, in the weeds, a punter who's a one-for-one relationship. They want their tips and their tips only, all the way through to the casual punter who's at the track, who's having a beer with friends, who just wants a recommendation, and we give them the best, most popular recommendations of the day. And we also give exotics, and we give other types of lists that are created from this algorithm, or the multi-threaded algorithms as we call them.
Yeah, no, that's incredibly helpful, because obviously not only is there data science going on there, but you're almost like learning the learners, if you will, because I'm sure that to some very experienced punters, knowing what everybody else is thinking is incredibly important to them, to the point where that may be a key factor in their decision-making process. Isn't that accurate?
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, we're seeing that today. So we obviously talk with a lot of our users as often as we can to get their feedback on the service. And I'll probably talk about how the service sort of evolved over the last sort of 12 to 24 months. But fundamentally, the feedback we're getting is, a particular one customer, for example, he spent an hour going through the form guide for one particular race, and he identified 5 potential opportunities that he wanted to invest in. And then he compared it with what Bet Odyssey had produced based on the criteria he'd put in there. And Bet Odyssey had selected 4 of the 5 selections automatically, instantly. So the penny dropped with him, where he said, okay, I've just spent an hour going through this process of elimination, going through all the details that I go through, whereas Bet Odyssey completely automated it. And so that saved him a lot of time. And now what he finds is that he's able to, as a racing enthusiast, he's able to go into every single race and every single opportunity without having to spend all that time and without missing these opportunities, right? So that's a huge benefit for these guys. And what he's also saying to me is that Bet Odyssey is identifying not necessarily all the favorites, but identifying horses that he would never have thought about. So he's throwing them into his trifectas, and he's getting huge success out of his trifectas because he loves playing his exotics. So they're the 2 benefits of this particular user. And there are others that I could obviously share with you, but we probably don't have enough time to go through them all.
Yeah, definitely. Hey, and George, turning to the investment side, because we're investors, can you just explain to us the Bet Odyssey revenue model? How does Bet Odyssey make money?
Sure. So what we did was, and again, I'll talk a little bit about the product and then talk about the revenue side. So the product first started being developed in 2018. We did a soft launch late last year, and we got some users. And then what we found was we didn't quite find the correct product market fit. And so we actually went back to our users and asked them what they thought we could improve and how we could make the service better than what we'd provided. Then we spent the next 6 months actually making the changes that would make the product more aligned with what the market was looking for. And so we found a really good, strong product market fit, where the stickiness was there, where the user rate was there. And so what we're finding is now we're seeing users on average accessing the site over a typical sort of monthly active user rate, around 200. They receive around 200 banner advertisements per month. Now, our model is around 3 core revenue streams. The first one is that we sell ad inventory within our mobile applications. And again, 200 banners per month per user. CPM rates, our target CPM rates that we're actually selling to now are roughly $15 per 1,000 ad impressions because of the type of audience that we have. So each user generates, as a free user, would generate, circa $3 per user per month. Then we have the option for users to upgrade to our subscription service. So effectively, when a user first downloads our application, they receive the full bells and whistles of the service for the first 14 days. And at the end of the 14 days, we start removing some of the premium services and they start hitting paywalls. And then we're starting to see now that conversion of people going to paying monthly subscribers. So we're generating both whether they're using the app for free or whether they're actually becoming paying monthly subscribers. And the third revenue stream that we have is around our daily email newsletter that we send out to 50,000 recipients. And we have half a dozen banner advertising slots within that newsletter that we sell to advertisers. And we've only just started selling the advertising space in the last probably 6 or 8 weeks. And we've already signed up the Reject Shop as our first national retail brand. So they've taken up some space and we've started selling other space as well to other people, but Reject Shop is the big one.
Yeah, no, that's great. And it certainly makes a lot of sense. And I also could imagine for companies, you'd have a very specific target audience, which is very valuable to people or to companies, because the more targeted you are, in my experience, the more valuable it is.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's another great point, Greg. So our audience is one of the premium audiences that advertisers are actually looking for. So typical income is $82,000 a year. Average disposable income to be spent on punting is around $1,300. So we're talking about a highly educated, highly engaged, high value audience that advertisers are actually looking for.
Right. Hey, George, just foreshadowing, in your mind for the next, call it 12 months, what would be your definition of success for Bet Odyssey?
So I think we're obviously doing a capital raise right now via on market, and the key things that we want to get from this is we've got a 12-month plan where we want to obviously close out the capital raise. We want to invest very heavily in our sales and marketing activities because the product, as I said, now is built, it's running. We have daily active users, and we have a growing download rate. All the things that you'd expect to see. So spend more money on sales and advertising, sales and marketing activities to grow our user base. Start selling more and more ad inventory as part of that process. We want to start increasing the number of sports categories that we have within the application. So right now, Bet Odyssey caters exclusively for thoroughbred racing. However, we're in the process now of integrating greyhound and harness as 2 additional sports categories. And then we're looking to integrate additional sports, traditional sports being football and basketball and soccer and cricket as the 4 kind of sports we're looking at. And then thirdly, we want to actually look to the US market to actually grow into the US market to launch products that cater for the US sports market. So that'll be sports that we want to include things like gridiron, baseball, basketball, and ice hockey. And again, going back to our platform, because we have actually spent 3 years building the platform, it's been designed from the beginning to be able to scale really quickly. So it's a high margin, low cost business model that allows for us to quite easily and quickly bolt on additional sports that will take us into other markets very quickly.
Right. And is that because, and forgive me, but I'm not that technical, are you effectively pulling in various data pieces of, obviously I'm familiar with NFL football as an example, where how many times does a team turnover average a game? That would be a massive statistic, but it's a data pull. Is that how it works?
That's exactly how it works. So at the moment, we have license agreements in place with Racing Australia and with Racing Australia's authorized resale partners. And so we buy the data in raw format. We ingest that data into our back-end systems, and then our algorithms. Well, firstly, we slice and dice the data to be exactly how we need it to work for our algorithms to work, and then we apply the algorithms to that. So for us to grow or to expand into other sports. It's as simple as going to an authorized data provider. So we don't scrape data. We don't do any of that sort of stuff. We buy authorized data from authorized distributors, and then we include that into our backend system. We format the data in such a way that the algorithms can access it, and then they just go off and do the work.
Great, great. And George, you alluded to, you're currently doing a capital raise. How much money, in these various formats are you looking for at this moment?
Yeah, so we're looking to raise, the minimum raise we're looking to do is 300,000 and up to $2 million. And the reason why we don't really need that much capital is because this is not a capital intensive business. This is like I said, a very, very low cost business model because we're using technology to actually deliver the service. So we don't, unlike other tipping services that could charge 20, 30, 50, even $200 a month for their services, they have the constraints, if you like, of having high staff requirements and physical tipsters going through the form and spending time and effort doing that. Whereas we don't have any of that. Ours is completely automated. So for us, the raise that we're looking to do is effectively just to go into the sales and marketing activities with a view that in the next 12 months, as long as we hit meaningful revenue, which obviously we're planning to do, we're looking at an exit potential on the ASX in the next 12 months. That's how aggressive we are with this business.
That sounds great, George.
Yeah.
George, we have to keep these interviews short, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Do you have any closing remarks for the audience?
Look, I think one thing about Bet Odyssey, as we've kind of touched on, is we're not a bookmaker. We're a companion service. We've got a product that's in the market. We've got daily active users. We send out emails to 50,000 customers every day. We've got our first advertiser. We've got our first subscribers. So any investor that comes in is coming in at the early stage of what we expect to be a global opportunity, because this is a global game being sport. And we welcome anyone to obviously read our offer document and to come back to us with any questions if they have any.
Great. George, thank you very much and be in touch.
Thank you.